All right. Before we get to today's, there were some corrections, right?
Right,
From last time,
right. When we talked about 58 and 59,
right?
made my memory go back a little bit. I joined the Army in January of 1955,
Right.
and my enlistment was for 3 years. I had to have re-enlisted before January 1958. So I re-enlisted prior to Mom and I getting married. Sometime in, you could re-enlist early. You didn't have to wait to your actual discharge date to re-enlist. You could re-enlist 6 months early, depending
Right.
on how long you're going to re-enlist.
Right.
I think I re-enlisted in October, just before we got married, and it committed to stay in the service another 3 years.
Right.
So that would have put me in mid 60s or mid 1960 with another 3 year commitment.
Right.
So I got married.
So your first 3 year commitment would have ended when?
January 28th, 1958.
58. So the next one takes you like 62 then.
No, it's a 3 year enlisted.
60.
It takes me in 1960. I re-enlisted in 57.
Right.
So it's 58, 59, 60, middle of 60.
Okay.
I would have been eligible for discharge if I got out.
All right. But you didn't.
I didn't. I actually in 1960, because when we talked the other day, I couldn't remember if I re-enlisted for 3 or 6 years.
Right.
Again, after I sat back and thought about it for a while, I re-enlisted for 6 years, never really fully committing myself to stay in the service.
Right.
But once Mom and I were married and Opa got sick and we saw that this was going to be
You re-enlisted for 3 years.
right.
Then in the 60s, you re-enlisted for 6 years.
Yeah. So yeah, in 1960, which we're going to talk about in a minute, Mom had to go to Germany because Opa got ill. And prior to her going there, because money was scarce for us, I re-enlisted for 6 years, got a 6 year bonus, and enabled you and Mom to fly back to Germany.
Okay. And so that kind of takes us to where we are today. Kind of today is like 61 and 62, right? Because at the end of 1960, Opa died.
Right.
And
Right.
then Mom went back to Germany
Right.
with me.
Right.
And then what were you doing?
Well, again, had moved from being a truck driver
Right.
to going to work in the control center in Pittsburgh.
Right.
Now, I don't know if we talked about that or not, if we have that on tape.
Yeah.
So we already put that on tape?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right.
The missile stuff.
Yeah. So I went to the control room, and that's when I learned how to write backwards and read
Right.
coordinates from a different direction than looking straight at it. And we did exercises, and we worked shift work. Normally doing shift work, we do some training.
Right.
And we did that. I mean, in the Army, it was pretty cut and dry. Unless you were out on a specific mission or manning something in the location like outpost or on patrol or something, you were training, or you were maintenance in your vehicle, or you were doing PT. There was 1,000 things you could do in the Army, and we did them all. And I think they still pretty much maintain that consistent training, or I'm out in the field doing what I'm being paid to do.
Right. Now, at some point, you got orders to Korea.
Yeah. So in 1960, just to recap real quick.
Yeah.
Early 60, Opa got sick. You and Mom went back to Germany. Late 60, actually, the 26th of December, Opa dies. We're in Carnegie. A month or two after that, I think it was February 61.
Right.
I get orders to go to Korea. And it's similar to what I did in Germany. When I joined the Army, I went to a unit, and the whole unit went to Germany together.
Right.
Well, they were forming a new missile battery battalion to go to Korea. It was the 7th Battalion, 2nd Artillery, the 7 Deuce. And we were going to train in El Paso, Texas, because that was at El Paso was where all the missile training went on. McGuire Field, where there's big places to shoot missiles, and Area 51 where they dropped the atomic bomb. Well, that was all
Right.
right next to El Paso, right next to Fort Bliss.
Right.
So Fort Bliss was the Air Defense Center. I drove from Pittsburgh to El Paso to primarily to go report, because I had to go there, and to find a home for you and Mom to come down, and we were going to stay together until I had to go to Korea.
Right.
It took me a day or so to get to El Paso, driving through, leaving the Northeast until I hit the southern states. It was ice almost all the way. But once I hit the southern states, the weather was beautiful.
Right.
Drive to El Paso, sign in, go find a house in El Paso that's not too far from Fort Bliss, rent the house, and you and Mom came back, and I think it was a week or two, you and Mom came down on the train from Pittsburgh to El Paso.
Like on Amtrak, or was that
I
around
don't think
then?
Amtrak was around. They still had passenger trains, not a lot, but they still
Right.
had some, and obviously it got from Pittsburgh to El Paso. And then there was a different technology. The artillery, the missile batteries were Hawk missiles,
Right.
Hawk homing all the way killer. There was 4 batteries in a battalion and a headquarters. And the headquarters had a control center similar to the one in South Park and the Missile Master that was built in Pittsburgh in the 60s, early 60s. This was similar, except it was mounted in a truck. And associated with the control center was a radar. So the radar let you see whatever the batteries were seeing
Right.
with their acquisition radars. And so initially we had to learn how to run the control center, how to hook it all up and run it. It had big cables you had to hook in, you had generators. And we had to learn all of that equipment. And so we went to El Paso, and they sent us to school. I think when I think back, I think it was Northrop that built the control center, and I think they're the ones who trained us. So we could figure out how to hook everything up and how to use the equipment and do a few exercises. They had taped exercises so you could sit in there and watch blips on the screen and identify them and figure out how to use the equipment.
Right.
And I think the school was like 2 weeks long. But we didn't do a lot of training for that. We set it up and practiced setting it up and tearing it down, just so we had the ability to do it once we got to wherever we were going. And if we moved, we could do it again.
Right.
I got moved once we got trained and figured out how to do so. The operations sergeant, S3 sergeant, asked me to come to work for him. And so most of my time in Fort Bliss with the training was working in S3, and that's putting together plans and operation of things. And a lot of it was to do with what we were going to do once we got to Korea.
Right.
And I think, like I said, we got there in February. I think we started training in March.
Right.
Now the line batteries, battery A, B, C, D, they actually went to McGregor Range, and we went there also. And they'd fire the missiles. They'd actually go out and lock on to drone aircraft and shoot them down. And so they were training on actually how to fire the missiles. And we'd always go out and understand what they were doing so we could understand what we were working with when we got to Korea. So that was part of our training. And even though I was in operations in S3, I would get my rotation to go out and work with the batteries or actually firing the missiles.
Right.
So I think in July.
That's just something about you giving PT.
I give PT. That was my morning job. So we did PT every morning.
Right.
We'd go out. If you ever saw the old movies where there's a wooden stand and one guy gets up on the stand and gives PT.
Right.
A whole bunch of other guys. That was me on the stand.
Right.
And when we got finished with that, we'd double time, mile. I mean, it wasn't a long distance, but we'd go out and double time a mile. And so in July, we're finishing up on our training. I drive you and Mom back to Pittsburgh and put you on a plane to go to Germany, because you were going to live in Germany while I was stationed in Korea.
Now, was this the trip to Germany after her dad passed away? This is when she went back. I mean, she hadn't been back since her dad passed.
Exactly. She hadn't been back since she was there when he was sick.
Right.
Call from Irving.
She hadn't been there since he had been sick, which was in early 1960, in the spring of
Right.
1960.
Okay.
So she's going back to live in Germany for the 13 months roughly that I'm supposed to be in Korea. It's a 13-month tour. We call them hardship tours or short tours.
Right.
And it was 13 months long. And then I flew back to Korea.
Now, is this when Aunt Muchka tried to do me in
I don't recall that.
out of the stroller?
I don't
You
recall
recall that? I have
No.
to ask Mom.
You have to get Mom in that one.
Yeah.
Well, you
Yeah.
went back and went to kindergarten there, and as I recall, when I got back from Korea, you didn't speak much English, if any,
Just German.
just German, because you had forgotten your English, and so you're 2 years old when you go
Right.
back, Jim, and your initial language was German, so you're going back and forth between German and English. You're probably confused as hell.
No, I'm still confused.
So I go back to El Paso to Fort Bliss.
Right.
We fly to San Francisco. We get on a ship. It takes, I'm pretty sure it was a 13-day trip. We take a trip and we go to Incheon, Korea. Now in Incheon, you don't pull up to a dock. You dock outside the docking area, and you actually go in on the barges that you see guys storming the beaches with.
Right.
And we didn't storm the beach. We rode in on the barge and dismounted the barge onto solid ground. And we were given temporary quarters there. I mean, so now you got a whole battalion,
Right.
and other people, because the ship was bigger than hold a battalion. But so we all get off. Some of the people got off and went to the duty stations. We got off and went to a temporary billets, because we were going to a new facility they had built specifically for the headquarters of this battalion. And you go there and you go into the PX or a snack bar or anything,
Right.
and you discover that Koreans eat a lot of garlic.
This was back in '61.
Yeah.
Right.
And because there's a heavy odor of garlic
Right.
and almost every place you go where the Koreans are.
Now, you went back in the 2000s, right? For a year. Was it the 90s or 2000s?
I went back in 1987.
Was it that long ago?
Yeah, I went back in 1987, and EDS and
Right.
Lucky Gold Star formed a joint venture.
Right.
It was going to be a service company like EDS was.
Right.
And I went over and was responsible for the technical part of that.
Now, did you notice the same? Had it changed, or was it the same? The
It
garlic
they
thing.
still, but it wasn't as pronounced when I went back as it was my initial trip there.
Right.
And I think it was for parasites. I don't know that that's true, but
Right.
my understanding is garlic is a good guard against things that hurt your body.
Right.
And I think that the Koreans made sure that they could take care of their body. So you could smell a lot of garlic. I mean, that was one of the things I noticed. I'm like, wow, what's that? And one of the guys that had been in Korea before said it's garlic. Anyway, we stayed there for a temporary for 2-3 days.
Right.
And then we were bused to our permanent location, which was about 15 miles north of Seoul. And it was built up. It had metal buildings.
Right.
And it was enough to house everybody almost. Uh, there was some space missing. So my group, which was the control center group, I think there was 6 of us
Right.
that were going to live in the guy in charge of us, the sergeant in charge of us, billeted with the NCO in the NCO building. We put up a James Way. A James Way is a tent, a rounded tent, and it's canvas, but it's insulated canvas, and the tent poles are rounded tent poles. So you put the James Way up, and we had a couple of diesel burner stoves in there we could pump up and turn on when it was cold, and it was comfortable. So I mean, we stayed there for the entire period we were in Korea.
So 13 months in a tent?
Actually, yeah, I mean, as much time as I spent in the Army, and most of my time was spent in tents up to that period of time.
I mean, more time in tents than in any place else.
AP Hill, we lived in
Yeah.
a tent. Lebanon, we lived in a tent. And here I am in Korea, we're living in a tent again.
13 months in a tent.
But then we were going to put our control center and the radar associated with the control center on top of a mountain.
Right.
It was 15 miles, maybe 20 miles further north.
How far are you from North Korea, the border at this point?
Well, Seoul's pretty close to it. I don't know. It's not very far.
Right.
We're not far, 40, 50 miles maximum, I would think. I don't remember, but it's not far from Seoul. Seoul's in the northern part of South Korea. And so we go out there, and this thing's up a mountain. I mean, a mountain. Feel like you're almost going straight up. And the last 100 yards was almost straight up. I didn't think we were going to get the trucks up there. I thought they were going to fall over our initial going up the hill. So we get up there and we set up the radar and we set up the control center. And then we have probably 4 weeks. We're manning it, the control center. We're using it, but we're trying to build a little bit of comfort so you don't have to go outside to go from the control center to the radar truck, to go in the radar truck if something wrong,
Right.
especially in the wintertime, because it gets bitter cold. Then we build a place for us to be in instead of outside when you're not on shift. And you go up there as a shift. There might be 3 or 4 of you,
Right.
depending on, I don't recall what the shift was, but so you go in there and you man the center for 4 hours, and you come out, take 8-hour break, and you go back in there for 4 hours, and it's around the
So
clock.
are you living up there when it's your turn?
When it's your turn, you live up there for 24 hours. Okay, once we get the thing set up, we had a 3/4 ton truck
Right.
that we would drive to there. And the guys who were being relieved would drive a 3/4 ton truck back to where we were billeted. And then the next morning, the next crew would come up with the 3/4 ton truck. And we stayed up there for a couple of months, and we were having trouble with the radar picking up images, and it was thought to be, and I don't recall, that it was too high up and it wasn't bouncing off the ground and wouldn't get what it was supposed to get to pick up targets. And so we thought somebody thought it would be more prudent to move that combination of the radar and the control center down next to the headquarters where we were billeted. And we did that, and it worked a lot better. So we had dig a big hole. The radar went on top of the hill, but the control center went inside a bunker, almost bunker,
Right.
that was a great big hole. It had sandbags along the side of it. And so we could walk back and forth
Right.
from where we were billeted
Right.
to where we were working. And then we went on 4-hour shifts, or I don't recall. I think we did 4-hour shifts, and then
Right.
you just rotated. You'd be on for 4 hours and maybe off for 20 and then back on for 4. And now you're doing the same thing you do wherever you go. You're working, and then during the day, we'd all get up and train. If you hadn't worked the night before and were sleeping, you'd go train, and we'd do exercises just like we had done it in other places where we did air defense things. Or
Right.
you're in the cab, you're doing training with whatever your job is. And we did that. now we're just watching the clock tick to see how long.
Well, I mean, is there time when you're off duty?
Yeah, you're off duty.
So what do you do during that time?
Get drunk.
I remember a name like Wenzel's Pack Rats or something.
Yeah, Wenzel's Pack Rat. Captain Wenzel was the guy in charge of us.
Right.
I know one of the guys said, "Hey, let's get jackets," and I don't even know if we have the jacket anymore, if it's gone.
It was all
Torn
tore up.
up,
Yeah,
yeah.
it
And
just
so-
didn't survive.
Yeah, so we had patches put on Wenzel's Pack Rats. And the group, I think there was 8 of us. Wenzel and Wilson was the sergeant, and then the other guys that were in the group, we all bought a jacket.
Right.
So now we got there probably in August,
Right.
August. I'm sure it was August of '62. And now we're into 63. We're into August.
September of '62.
Yeah.
That's when we came back.
Yeah, I think you guys came back from Germany because I was supposed to go home.
Right.
That my 13 months was up, so we were trying to time it so you'd be there, wouldn't wait long, I'd be there, and we'd go wherever we were going.
Right.
And so it was August, I think, and we're getting ready. Now, most of us are leaving.
In '62. This is August of '62.
Yeah. And
Right.
most of us are leaving because we came there. There were some guys who came as draftees and they didn't have enough time left in the military to stay there. So they left, maybe spent 6 months or 8 months in Korea and they left.
Right.
But there's a group of us that came together, we were all regular Army, and we were going to leave together. People are coming in to replace us.
Right.
They're dribbling in and we're training them. And we get to a point where we can turn in a lot of our field gear that we would have used if we had been deployed to go someplace else.
Right.
If we had to move the battalion and the batteries for some
Right.
reason. And so we had turned in our equipment. And then along came the Cuban crisis,
Cuban Missile Crisis.
the Cuban Missile Crisis.
Right.
And we get over the loudspeaker, the guys who had turned in their equipment go draw it again. So we had to go get all the stuff that we had turned in because we thought we were leaving. And I don't recall how long, I think it was 6-8 weeks
Right.
they extended us. So instead of going home in September, I think we went home end of October, November.
So where were Mom and I?
You were in Pittsburgh.
In Pittsburgh.
With Grandma, my mom. And then again, it's November, I think late October, November.
Right.
I get home and
Now, how did you come back? You went there by boat.
come back by boat. 13 days on the boat, land at San Francisco, get a plane, fly to Pittsburgh, meet you, Mom, and Grandma in Pittsburgh airport. We had been assigned, we were going to move to Woburn, Massachusetts. We were going to go to Winthrop, Massachusetts. It was where I was going to be stationed.
Right.
There's a place there, and I doubt whether it's still there, called Fort Banks.
Right.
There's a little Army facility there at Winthrop. We were going to be, my duty station was going to be Winthrop. And we got there and we stayed in a temporary quarter place for about a week.
Right.
And we got housing in a town outside of Boston, it's called Woburn. And it was a nice house, brand new house. I think it was 2-bedroom, living room, kitchen, and a basement. So it was a nice house. And we moved there, and then I started to work, and it was a missile master. And the missile master was close to Winthrop, but it was a little place right on the coast called it was Fort Heath. I don't know that the town had a different name, but where the missile master was called Fort Heath.
And so that takes us to the end of 62 then.
That's the end of 62.
Okay.
We're done with 62.
Now, just for grins, how many times have you and mom moved by this point?
Okay, and I'm going to try to keep them straight. So we got married and we moved into the upstairs apartment in Lakehausen. Weren't there too long. We moved into the house that Opa had found for us. I had to move out of there because I went to Lebanon. So if you count mom, she had to move home again.
Right.
We get back from Lebanon. We had to find housing closer to the caserne because of all the restrictions they put on us. So we moved to another place.
That's 4.
That's 4. In 1959, we went to Pittsburgh. We lived in Pittsburgh with my mother. And then we moved to Carnegie in 1960.
That's 6.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then we moved to El Paso, to the little house that I rented in El Paso.
Right.
Then you and mom moved to Germany. Okay.
That's 8.
Then we come back from Germany. We moved to Fort Banks for a week or two. And then we moved to Woburn.
So by the end of 62, moved 10 times.
Yeah, I bet 5 years, 6 years in the, what, 6 or 7 years in the Army at this point. And we've moved 10
10
times.
times. It doesn't get better.
I think when we finished the military, I think we had moved 28 times.
Yeah.